Today, I'm very happy to be with Stephen Galloway, the Dean of the Dodge College of Film and Media Arts here at Chapman University in Southern California. The Dodge School is the #4 ranked film school in the United States. Dean Galloway is a New York Times best-selling author. He was previously the executive editor at The Hollywood Reporter. He's not an academic per se, but he has a strong academic credentials record. And he's a graduate from Cambridge University in the UK with first-class honors and came to the United States on a Harkness Fellowship. That's the equivalent in the British system of a Rhodes Scholarship. And he also studied at the American Film Institute. So Dean Galloway, Stephen, it's my pleasure to be with you today and talk a little bit about the writers' strike.
The changes of the internet, which were already underway, were clearly going to create an avalanche of new possibilities in entertainment. And that was a big feature of the negotiation. And now, of course, we're on the brink of AI changing everything, while still dealing with the fact that the streaming universe has upended the traditional economic models. Historically, writers would get paid residuals. So if you write a TV movie and then it's sold to somebody else, not the original broadcaster, you get a cut. What's happened with the streamers is they're not reselling. So a whole revenue stream has dried up. At the same time, they're keeping very quiet about their numbers and audiences, which is a way of defusing requests for profit participation. So these are serious issues for the writers, especially in a world of change. And what they're essentially saying is, we don't want to wait until the entire business has changed and this system has calcified. We want you to tell us now how we're getting a cut.
That makes sense. Now, there have been writer strikes in the past. So the most recent one was back in 2007. What's the difference between the one back then and the one that we're facing right now?
Well, one thing in common and one thing that's different. One in common is they want more money. And they want higher thresholds of minimum pay. And what's different is a lot of TV shows are written with groups of writers. That's called the writer's room. And it's a form of writing that many people like because you're not alone with, a quill, and a piece of parchment in a monastery. The companies today are using fewer of these, and they're also developing shows with just a minimal group of writers. They're sort of called mini rooms. And the Writers Guild wants to get more writers in here with guaranteed pay and a higher pay level for those who are essentially doing the really creative work. Now, from the studios and networks point of view, yes, but this is also the highest risk because this is development and it might lead to nothing. So each side has a point of view. The companies, the owners, are also saying, look, we're laying off a lot of people because our profits are down. Disney, Netflix, Time Warner, or now Warner Brothers Discovery as it is, which has a gigantic amount of debt from when Discovery essentially bought Time Warner from AT&T. So you have all this debt to pay off. You're having streaming revenues that are far lower than many competitors expected. They're saying now we have to lower our costs. How can we lower our costs if we have to pay you guys more? And if we pay you more, we're going to have to pay the actors more, and we're going to have to pay the directors more. So I'm a writer, my sympathy is with the writers, but there are two sides to this argument.
Now, so it's referred to as the writer's strike, but there's a large number of different stakeholders that are affected here. So everything from the studios to the streamers to the production companies and the actors, of course, as well. So, who is most affected here among all the different classes of folks that are suffering as a result of the strike?
Everyone from waiters to agents to producers who won't be able to work. I heard an interesting interview this morning with a guy who rents out those big trailers that actors sit in or that they ship food in. Well, he's not renting them out. So in the last strike, his revenues were down by more than 50%. He has employees, people you would never connect with the entertainment business. So all these people are affected. Already some shows have been suspended. For instance, Stranger Things, which is written and produced and directed by Dodge alumni, the Duffer Brothers, they shut down because they wouldn't cross the picket lines. At the moment, some of the networks and studios are insisting that the writer-producer hybrid, what tends to be known as the showrunner, should continue working because they're producers as well as writers. And they're saying, well, no, we're writers. But even if they continue working, there's not that much they can do. So the Duffer Brothers drew a line in the sand saying, we're not doing it, even if we have to shut down production. Now, that's not just the actors. It's not just them. It's not just their agents. It's the assistants. It's the people bringing food. It's the people who are making costumes, building sets, carpenters, sound designers, caterers, hotels that put up all those people in Atlanta where it's shot. So there is a huge ripple effect. It's estimated that the LA economy lost $2 billion with the last strike, which lasted 100 days. Now, there's some debate about whether that's real, whether it was in fact much lower, but it's at least hundreds of millions that spread through the economy. And of course, we don't know how long this strike will last. Most people think this will not be a short strike.
Yeah, so who is affected the most? Is it television or feature films, or if there is, such a distinction anymore now in a totally different landscape compared to 15 years ago?
There isn't a distinction. So writers work across multiple media these days. Who's really affected is the grunt working writer, who's one of many on a show, who now has no income and maybe can't pay the rent. In other words, the people who paid the least. But I would argue equally, it's all the people they hire, babysitters, painters to fix their places, all those things you put on whole car sellers. It takes a little while to get there, but as soon as this strike has been in place for 2 weeks or a month, everybody's going to say, this is going to be for a while, we're going to stop spending. And that fuels the economy. There's always been a rule of thumb that when a production comes to town, the real spend is many multiples of the nominal spend. So if the budget is $1 million, it's generating 7 or 8 million of real economic activity. That is what's going to be impacted.
That's very interesting. I mean, how does it work with the studios and the producers of content? Do they have sort of an inventory so that they will not be immediately affected, but they have some inventory to sort of roll out? Help us understand how that works.
Yes, different shows and different companies have different amounts of inventory. There are some shows that have none. So all the daily talk shows that need writers, Stephen Colbert and so on, shut down immediately. And then there are others where, Netflix has series in the can that was shot a year or two ago. And also because they all know the strike was looming, they hurried to get those in. There are also feature films that can be shot because the scripts have been written. What happens is when a rewrite is necessary and you can't do it, and then the quality goes down, but they have many things that are in the works. So in some ways, if the strike goes on, you may still be able to watch new movies and new TV shows. And then in a year's time, you're suddenly wondering, well, why is that next season of White Lotus not showing up when it's meant to show up? Because of the strike that takes place now. So the ripple effect spreads out gradually. The immediate hit is apparent, but maybe not as apparent as it will be in a few months' time.
Absolutely, that makes sense to me. Now, is this an opportunity for international markets, perhaps, where they may not be so affected by the strike? South Korea, of course, Seoul has quickly become an important place for content and production. Is this an opportunity for those international markets?
It's a huge opportunity because we've sort of been at an inflection point recently. I felt Squid Game was a gigantic turning point, that you have a show in a foreign language that's the biggest show on television. And previously, American audiences have been very reluctant to watch anything with subtitles. And this was part of a fracturing of the entertainment business that I've been arguing would happen for a long time, where you don't just have Fortress Hollywood, but you actually have several fortresses spread around the world. You're seeing that in China, you're seeing that in South Korea, you will see it with the Spanish language market. Those places are not going to be affected. And it may well be that the distributors and the streamers say, we need to buy more of your product, get moving. They'll be saying with the new Squid Game series, quick, get it to us quicker. And what do we need to give you to give another season? So yes, they'll benefit. Reality shows will benefit, although I feel that's kind of at a saturation point. But there are also genres and formats that could maybe not disappear, but take a very mortal wound. Late night, which has really been suffering. People get used to not watching those talk shows. They may not come back. Look how long it took audiences to go back to movie theaters after COVID. And we're not fully back. And people are going to see a different kind of film. The middle ground character drama has vanished. The specialty semi-art house drama is in dire straits. They're going to see action, tentpole effects, horror, because they got used to seeing those genres somewhere else. So if I had to say, if the strike continues for 100 days or more, which is what's being predicted, yes, global productions will have an opportunity, and late night will be drastically devastated.
You know, you follow these matters quite closely, obviously. What is it about the strike that you think is most unusual or interesting that perhaps, you know, our audience here, they would be fascinated knowing that perhaps, you know, no one would ordinarily think about? Anything that comes to your mind?
Well, what's unusual to me is that it's the writers who historically have not held power in Hollywood, who actually now do. We're also seeing a shift in the industry where for many years the directors were the locus of power. You know, what we call the auteurs, the writer, director, the Tarantinos, the Spielbergs, the Scorseses, although he doesn't write his own scripts. But these visionary directors, that's what everybody wanted to be. And we've shifted towards the writer-producer as being at the center of power. Shonda Rhimes, people like that. Ryan Murphy, both of them struck multi-$100-million deals with Netflix. It's interesting that this is also them staking their ground and saying everything begins with the idea and the script, and you must pay that respect. And even in the heyday of Hollywood, when they could afford great writers like William Faulkner and Scott Fitzgerald, the writers were treated like dirt. I think this is potentially a shift, especially if they win.
Interesting. Listen, Stephen Galloway, who is the Dean of the Dodge College of Film and Media Arts here at Chapman University. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate your insights on this topic related to the writer's strike. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Thank you, Henrik. Thank you.